Here to talk about all things California politics is KCBS political reporter Doug Sovern. Thanks for being with us today.
I am.
Let's talk a little bit about the status of, well, what has been billed as something that is finally going to put a dent in the homelessness problem here in California. These care courts that would implore people with severe drug problems or severe mental illness to get help. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, this is Governor Newsom's latest big idea on homelessness, and his idea is basically a new level of the court system, a new layer of the court system, where you could force people basically more easily to get care against their will. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. Somebody would go before a judge, and the judge could, with a care plan, force them to get mental health treatment because right now it is so difficult to get somebody off the streets who doesn't want to be there. If they know how to work the system and use the right language, they're not going to hurt themselves or someone else. It's really hard to get somebody to get mental health treatment that they may need. So this bill it was introduced in the state legislature, and it passed its first committee in the state Senate, but not without a lot of debate and a lot of reservations and a lot of criticism. And it's pretty clear that there's pretty fierce resistance to this from civil liberties folks, from advocates for the homeless, from some mental health people, from many people who are in office. It's moving forward slowly. Will it really happen? If it does, it won't be in the form as proposed initially by Governor Newsom. They will definitely have to modify this. They'll have to tweak it, more protections for people's rights. We will see if this really gets through, or was this just one of those big election year pronouncements where the governor can, look like he's doing something really good, but when you get down to the nitty gritty, it never happens, or it happens in a very different form. We will see. It's working its way through the system. It may get there, but it's going to take some time, and I bet it'll look a lot different if it does by the time it's done.
So take us inside some of the arguments about this. We've heard these civil liberty arguments many times.
Mm-hmm.
Compelling somebody to get medical care. People are concerned that you're, criminalizing mental health problems
Mm-hmm.
or drug use rather than treating the problem. But proponents of it, and Governor Newsom, what does he say to those who have these concerns about civil liberties?
Look, they say, and traditionally this was sort of a Republican talking point. Let's force these people into care. The Democrats were like, no way, we're not going to do that. And now some Democrats, like Governor Newsom, have come around to saying, this isn't getting better. It's not going away. We got to do something. So they're saying, look, we're sensitive to that. We don't want to round people up and put them in institutions like, 50 years ago. And this goes back to the 60s in California when there was a backlash the other way that people were being institutionalized and it was horrible. And so they created a system under Governor Reagan to give people more rights and make it harder. And the idea was that was going to come with a lot more money for treatment and beds, which didn't materialize. And that's part of the issue now. I mean, the governor says, look, we're going to do this compassionately. Everybody will have an advocate, but something's got to be done. And we're going to make sure we have the resources to make it effective. But that is kind of the rub. I mean, you look at what just came out in the San Francisco Chronicle this week about how the SRO system is working for homelessness in San Francisco. The money is not always there. The intentions may be great, but when the rubber meets the road, it doesn't always roll out the way you expect it to. And so will the resources be there? The state is saying, oh, yes, we definitely will have the beds. We definitely will have the slots. We'll have the shelter space. We'll have the treatment providers. You're going to have to hire a lot of public defenders just to defend these people in court under this new system. Mental health providers. I mean, there's a lot there that has to be figured out before this can happen. And that's part of the problem. And one of the things the critics are saying, look, are you really going to be able to pull this off?
Okay, well, we will continue to follow that. Meantime, something we're talking about on a nationwide level as well as here in California, the possibility of a 4-day work week. It sounds good to a lot of workers having
We all love that
a 3-day
idea.
weekend every week. But, how realistic is this?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll look a little more like France or Denmark or something like that. A lot of people love this idea. We brought this up at our radio station years ago. Could we work 4 days a week? We'll work 4 days, 10 hours a week. That doesn't really work with the nature of our business. It never happened. What this is a bill that would basically redefine the work week. And that means right now under law, if you work more than 40 hours, you get overtime. This would make it 32 hours. And it would only apply to big companies, so 500 or more employees, I believe it is. So that's a couple thousand companies, which is millions of people in California. And if you worked at one of those companies, your work week would be defined as 32 hours. And anything over that, you would get paid overtime. And that means either you'd only work a 4-day week or you'd make more money. And of course, the Chamber of Commerce and a lot of business interests say, no, this is a job killer. You're gonna raise the price of labor too much for these companies. It's not fair. And people also say, well, they'll just cut everybody's hours and we'll make less money. This isn't fair. They won't pay us anymore. We'll just work less than full time. Everybody will become a part-time worker. So there's a lot of complications to this one too. And again, it's another one where you look at it and you say, is this really going to get there? Or is this one of those incremental things where over time, maybe someday it'll happen? It's working its way through the legislature. Evan Lowe from the Bay Area is the proponent of it. I don't know that it's really going to happen because it's going to be seen as so radical by some people. And if it happens at that big level, 500 or more workers, what happens at the lower level where people are still working 40 hours? You're going to have this two-tiered system. I don't know if this one's ever going to happen either, but they're working on it.
Well, the interesting thing is sometimes you see these things being pushed at a governmental level, and then the private sector responds and says, hey, maybe we can get better people if we're offering this. Obviously, it's popular when it comes to public opinion. So we'll see if we can get that kind of effect. Meantime, we were talking about the Republican Party in California always sort of playing second fiddle to the Democrats, if you will. They had their big convention recently, the California GOP convention. Anybody sticking out? What are you seeing as far as themes?
Well, I would even argue that the Republicans are third fiddle in California behind the no party preference. You've got the Democrats, you got the independents, and then you have the Republicans bringing up the rear. It doesn't look likely to change that much. But, the big thing out of this Republican convention is they look like they finally have a couple of viable, potentially, statewide candidates who can at least make it to November. I mean, they've had races where it ends up being two Democrats in the top two primary. Attorney General and State Controller. Those are the two jobs where they think they've maybe got a shot. They've got Lan Hee Chen, who's from Stanford, who was endorsed by the LA Times. He's running for controller. He's got a good shot because there are three Democrats running, so he should at least get into the top two. And he's an attractive guy to more moderate voters, independents. Maybe, we'll have a chance in November. And then for Attorney General, they have Nathan Hochman, who's a former U.S. attorney, but there's Anne Marie Schubert, who's the independent DA from Sacramento, and they're fighting for that second spot, probably against Democrat incumbent Rob Bonta. I mean, in the end, most Democrats in California vote for the person with the D after their name, and it is overwhelmingly difficult right now for a Republican to break through. I think that's still going to be the case, but they're at least starting to build a little bit of a bench, and you're going to still see the fight within the party in California of the Trump Republicans versus the more moderate traditional Republicans, just as you're seeing nationwide. We'll have to see how big a role former President Trump plays in California this fall. I bet he'll be out here campaigning, especially as he looks towards 2024, because I'm sure he's going to run again. But that's, the Republicans came out of their convention with probably, some optimism, but it's got to be tempered by reality that they have a long road ahead of them in California.
Certainly. All right. Well, we know you will keep your eye on all of it. We appreciate your insight. KCBS political reporter Doug Sovern, thanks for being with us on CBS News Bay Area.
Thanks, Ann. Always good. See you next time.